What is up, guys, and welcome back to Visualize History and Lore. Today we have a Lord of the Rings video discussing my top 5 discrepancies with the Lord of the Rings series, or top 5 misconceptions about the Lord of the Rings series and what people usually tend to think about it. Now, I chose these off my top 5 biggest pet peeves that the average Joe watching it, takes into conception about the Lord of the Rings series that is simply untrue to me. I think these are the most important ones that need to be told, that these are not true and these are different from what you think. So starting off at number 5, we have Aragorn and his denial to the throne, and when he gets the sword of Anduril. This sword was given to Aragorn when he was about 20, the shards of it at least, were given to Aragorn when he was about 20, and the sword in the movies, as it's depicted, was given to Aragorn at Dunharrow when Rohan was mustering their force to ride to the aid of Gondor. Now, it is said in the movies that Arwen encouraged her father to reforge the sword and give it to Aragorn, which is simply untrue. Aragorn gets the sword when he is in Rivendell before he leaves off, and in fact gets a scabbard for it at Lothlorien when they stop there. That's one of the gifts given to the Fellowship, and that's Aragorn's gift from Galadriel, is the scabbard for Anduril. And that scabbard has the history of the sword on the scabbard and has one enchantment on it that whoever it is drawn, even if he is defeated, it can never be tarnished or stained with blood or anything like that. It will be always very clear. Now, another misconception in the movie, other than the simple one that Aragorn gets a sword at Dunharrow, is the fact that his denial to the throne. Now, it is true that Aragorn didn't quite deny the throne, but was afraid of it in his early ages. But come the Fellowship of the Ring and the end of the Third Age, Aragorn was very much gung-ho about taking up his mantle as, Elendil's son of Gondor, and he quite literally says that. Aragorn's moment when he finally accepts the position that he is the heir and he needs to uptake this, whatever his fate might be, to be corrupted like his forebears or to thrive and be good. His comes when he's recruiting the army of the dead, or the unfaithful men of Gondor who are cursed for fleeing from battle or fleeing from the aid of Isildur when they took an oath. And that's when he uses his sword and they understand that he is the king and he accepts his position. That moment in the books, it actually happens much further back. Now remember, he already has the sword given to him at the age of 20, is reforged in Rivendell and given to him before he leaves off on this quest. And he gets a scabbard at Lothlorien, and all along this, he is not denying a thing about his ancestry or what he needs to do, and he understands his mission. And come when they enter the Rohan, chasing down the Uruk-hai scouting party that has taken Merry and Pippin, and he's confronted by Éomer about why they're there. This is when Éomer is being cautious. Now, when he's being questioned time and time again. Aragorn finally gets enough of it, and Aragorn threw, and this is from the book itself, and this is one of my favorite things, he says, Aragorn threw back his cloak. The elven sheath glittered as he grasped it, and the bright blade of Anduril shone like a flame as he swept it out. Anduril, he cried. I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and I am called Elisar, the elf stone. Dunedain, the heir of Isildur, Elendil's son of Gondor. Here is a sword that was broken and forged again. Will you aid me or thwart me? Choose swiftly. And this here, when he cries out Elendil, he cries out to his ancestors. He accepts his position and makes it clear who he is, which he was hiding from it for so long. And this is his big come out moment to the world that he is here, when he was really hiding in the north the whole time. And I understand why Peter Jackson made the decision to have him have a conflict throughout the first 2 movies and accept it in the end for the big climactic end, is because he did have a struggle with this early on in his life, and I think he was trying to emulate that to the audience. So this wasn't just a simple decision to him. He wasn't gung-ho about going to this. He knew that his ancestors had failed before him. He knew his ancestors had been corrupted by the ring, and he understood that that was a danger and was worried of it, which is a good thing. And I think it's a good thing that Peter Jackson showed the audience, but it is a misconception. Number 4 is that Sauron is the main bad guy. Sauron is not the main bad guy. Now, for many people to understand this, I do have to explain a little bit. So, the Lord of the Rings is quite literally the end of what we know about the history and the idea of Tolkien's universe. It's like modern day, I guess you could say. He wrote modern day in Lord of the Rings, and then he went back and wrote everything else before, the complete history. So the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, is quite literally the most modern thing we have knowledge-wise about Lord of the Rings. Now, one of the big misconceptions is that Sauron is the main evil. Well, going back, and many people know who have only watched the movies would not know this, but Sauron is not the main evil. Back always to the beginning, this is important, stay with me on this, there is God. There is a God. And he brings into existence several Ainur, or arch-elves. Arch-elves. No, archangels is essentially how they're called. I like to describe them more like demigods almost, because they are part of him. They are a reflection of him. Many people like to call them archangels. I like demigods, but archangels is a better description for the average Joe about what they are. And he creates these archangels that emulates different parts of him and different parts of his personality and thought. And of all the ones he created, there is one that is most alike him, and that is Melkor. He goes by the name of Melkor. That's the name that's given to us. Now, Melkor is most like him in the fact that, well, literally everything. And because of this, he wants to be like him. He wants to be like God. He wants to create like God. In fact, the biggest thing about him is that he's jealous. He's jealous that he cannot make a thing of his own. He cannot create like God has created. For God tells him, anything you have thought, I have thought before. You are only a reflection of who I am and a part of me. And there's literally nothing you can create that I haven't already conjured, because you are me, essentially. So, and this really bugs Melkor, because he is a being of his own, and he wants to be a thought of his own, but essentially he's not. He is part of God. He is a reflection of God. And so through this, Melkor takes everything that all his other buddies who are reflections of God are doing, and he makes things in mockery of them. So you see, I can create things just like you all, and I can create all the same thing you guys can, but I'll create a mockery just to show you I'm different, to show you I have a different idea than you guys. And it's really this mockery that forms the one true evil, and that is Melkor. Or later he will be called by the elves Morgoth for his transactions down on Earth. Arda. Anyways, moving on, Sauron is not even an Ainur. Now, these Ainurs that want to create Middle-earth, or Arda, the whole Earth sphere, they come down from this heavenly place where God is to create this, and thus relinquishing that privilege of being with God and choosing to remain and have their powers locked within Arda to create this thing. And that's when they become Valar. It's only a difference in name. They're the same exact things that they were up there, except they are stuck to Arda. They are the will and the creation and the being of Arda, or Middle-earth. And Melkor is one of those people. He decides, hey, here's a playing ground where I can create my own things. This is where God's investing his time and effort into, so therefore I will be there to show him I can be different and I can do things better than he can. And that's an important, keep that in mind, 'cause that's important for my next point actually. But Sauron is not even Ainur or Valar. He's even lesser than these people. He is a Maiar, which is essentially, if there's a god and then there's archangels, he's essentially a lesser angel or a spirited type person. So to get you an idea of what Sauron essentially is that he's either a lesser angel or a Maiar. And for reference, actually Gandalf, who is a being, is a Maiar. And these Maiars, or lesser angels, are usually subscribed to a certain Valar. They're usually subscribed to somebody. They usually work in service of him. And Sauron was originally not a bad person. He was originally just like any other Joe, But of course, Melkor is the ultimate deceiver. He is the ultimate tricker and persuader. And he was able to persuade Sauron into service, and Sauron eventually became one of his top commanders, his top lords, and thus we have Sauron now in the First Age, when Melkor is completely thwarted and defeated. Sauron then continues his work, much like Melkor's other creations do. So that is who Sauron is. He is not all evil. Tolkien made it very clear that there is only one absolute evil in his stories, and that is Melkor, or if you like to call him Morgoth. The only absolute evil is Melkor, and Sauron is not initially evil, but is corrupted and turned into one of the most evil dudes, but nonetheless a simple lord, or how might you say, general to the ultimate evil person. Now, moving on, discussing what we were talking about last, where Melkor, or Morgoth if you wish to call him, creates everything in mockery of what God does, or what God's Valar do, which would again just be a subsequent action of God, because they are emulations of him. When this brings us to 3, orcs and uruks come out of the ground. I don't know why. I hate this. I absolutely hate this. But I love Peter Jackson, what he does, but this is my absolute biggest bug out of them all. Why the hell would you show uruks coming out of the ground? Why do you even need to show them coming out of the ground? He makes these lovely little accents to different stories and parts of the Lord of the Rings series in his movies, where Aragorn's talking about, he makes a reference in the Fellowship of the Ring, I believe it was, to Beren and Luthien, and that's beautiful. I love how he did that, because it's quite literally the kind of situation he's in right now with Arwen. So he does these little accents to explanations for things in the stories, or accents to things that were before and help explain what are now. And I don't know why he couldn't just do this with the uruks. Why does he have to show them coming out of the ground? Because this makes this misconception that these orcs are just bred little pods that Sauron puts in the ground, throws some juju magic. Sauron throws some juju magic on, and they pop out of the ground. Ugh, I don't know why he did that. It disgusts me every time. To describe it essentially, going back to what we said before, and this is why that was important, and this is why I think I had to put that before the Sauron is the main evil. I had to describe that before I described this one to help you all understand. Now I'm explaining this to the perspective of the average Joe who's just only seeing the movies. Now, orcs are only mockeries and sub-creations of elves. So when the Valar came down from being Ainur with God to create Arda, they're creating this earth and preparing it for God to send down another creation of his, and that is the elves. The elves are God's perfect creation, quite literally. Well, not quite perfect, but the ideal creation, his first. And this gift given to them is what the Valar are preparing Arda for, and Melkor is constantly, as they're preparing it, destroying their creations and trying to stop this and do his own stuff. But finally, the elves do eventually come, after this long struggle Melkor and the other Valars fighting. The elves do finally come, but unfortunately Melkor is more prepared than the Valar were, and Melkor is able to get to them first before the Valar do. Now, he at first just observes them, and then he sends what it's called shadows to take certain elves away from the pack, and it was told that when they stray, they would go missing, and this is because Melkor would send his servants to essentially take them so he could look at them, observe them, study them. And through these elves that he took and brought down into his fortresses, he tortured them. He, again, experimented with them and mutated them essentially into what we now know as orcs. And these orcs are no different than elves are, and they reproduce just as elves or any other human does. They're an actual race, and they're living, functioning race. They don't just pop out of the ground. Now, when people go, well, what are uruks? Explain that. Uruks it's never clear exactly what uruks are. The best description I can give is that Saruman did some weird mixing of his own. It's well described that Saruman is quite literally like Melkor for the wizards. He is one of the most powerful wizards, and he is most in like of Maiar or Valar because he wants to create things of his own. And so he creates uruks, and it's described that Uruk's are more of a orc-human mix, so one would assume with him ruling over, puppet ruling over Rohan, that he might have taken some of the Rohirrim, did some weird genetic mixing, race mixing production between orcs and humans. How that works, you let your mind roam there. I'm sure you can find it somewhere on the dark web. Alright, moving on to it would be 2, because we did the Aragorn for number 5, we did Sauron for number 4, we did the orcs for number 3. But I do have a second one, and this is, I do have 3 more to go, but one's like more of an honorable mention. So number 2 would be that, did Gandalf die? Now many people like to say, well, he couldn't have died, he was there, blah blah blah, he was just in a trance, or people in it isn't well described in the movies. It just says he's come back to until his time, what he needs to get done is done. That's essentially what he says in the movies, and then essentially that's why the elves, the wizards are even there. God, throughout this whole paradox of Lord of the Rings, interferes only a few times. And one of these times is with Gandalf, and one of these times is also with the bringing of the wizards. The wizards were Maiar, created by God in order to not stop. Now, stop this. This is important. They're not there to stop Melkor's doings or the evil's doings on Arda. God gives men something that the elves will never understand, and that is, nor that the men will even understand themselves, and that is mortality. These men, they truly understand mortality and the gift he has given them with mortality. They need to be put through the test, and through this, he sends down help, which are the wizards. One of the times that Eru interferes with the doings of Arda is he creates these wizards to go out into Arda and help curb the bads in the world. And the other thing he does is he brings Gandalf back to life. Gandalf does die in this fight against the Balrog that you see in the movie, which is not actually how Balrogs are. They're just described as like shadowy figures with expansive wings and stuff. But I do like the way that Peter Jackson took that liberty and made his own version of what he thought a Balrog might be, considering there's no exact version. So he does die in the fight against the Balrog, and he is brought back to life by God, because the wizards also have a leader, and that was Saruman. But Saruman got corrupted. The very thing he's meant to be down there to help curve, he got corrupted by. Given that Gandalf has been through the ringer and he's proven himself, Eru brings him back to life as the new leader, the new white wizard, to take up the mantle that Saruman threw away. So that's a big misconception that people don't understand. It's not one that peeves me much as the other ones, but it is one of the bigger misconceptions about the Lord of the Rings series I feel needs to get out there, because Gandalf did die and is brought back to take up the mantle of good, and that the wizards needed to do, and that is an important thing, because that's kind of like the Harry Potter series. If you're all into that, people are confused on whether Harry Potter actually died or not. Honestly, I'm still am too, but for sure Gandalf did die and was brought back. All right, before we get to our number 1, we have our honorable mention, and that is that hobbits do not actually have big feet, or they might, but we don't know. The myth around the hobbit feet is that they have these huge, gigantic feet, and they don't wear shoes, and they're just weird little elf things that have big feet. Now, this is not necessarily untrue, it's just uncertain, because elves are only described as having rough feet, or feet that are more hardy and hairier because they don't wear shoes. And is described within the hobbits there are clans, and one of the clans is the Proudfoot clan, and they are described as having abnormally huge feet. And a lot of the early conceptions before these movies came out for what hobbits might be, and again, hobbits are the centerpiece of these stories. It's hard to believe, but yes, they are the centerpiece of these stories. The hobbits have big feet, and because of these early conceptions of it, the Proudfoot clan gets their mark on Lord of the Rings history, being that all elves have big feet, and they may very well have abnormally big feet for their size, but it is only ever described like that to the Proudfeet and nobody else. I think that's by purpose, because I don't think all elves have big feet, but I digress. that is a misconception that people have, and it was an honorable mention because a little bit of a fun one. We've been mostly serious this whole time. I think for you all to relax before we get to the first one, because again, we do have another ringer to put you through, and I have put you through a lot here. So my number one is that Frodo is the true hero of the story. Simply untrue. Frodo fails in his quest. I mean, it's just the truth. He does fail. He fails to curb the temptation of the ring to him, and then that's not his fault, but it is the truth. He does fail to sway the temptations of the One Ring. But one person who never sways, even when he's had it on or used it, etc., is Sam. He is. Tolkien often described him as the true qualities. I tried to put the true qualities of a hero into Sam, and so Sam is the emulation of true qualities of a hero. Frodo fails many times to sway the ring, and he would not have gotten half as far as he did without Sam. And that's simply it. Wow, I thought I'd have more to say about that, but that's about it. If you look back through the series, Sam used the ring. He's been around the ring just as much as Frodo is, even though it's not around his neck. It's just as close to, Frodo as it is Sam. It has the same effect on people who were much further away from it before. He not only wore the ring, but had it on for an extensive period of time. And time and time again, he effortlessly dissuaded the persuasions of the ring and the powers of the ring. It was there at the end to help destroy it. I lied. I do have more to say about it. This is post-editing. As going back through it, I wanted to make this clear, because the conception made in the movie is that Frodo and Sam are best buddies, they're friends, and essentially they are the best of friends, even in the books. But the books describes more of an interesting relationship between them, more the fact that Frodo is a senior and Sam is more a foot soldier that works tirelessly to support Frodo in his endeavors. As a true friend, and Frodo doesn't see him as any less than a friend, but it is more of an interesting relationship that Sam is in a service or in a duty to Frodo, almost as if like a knight. And due to this, it's because of this immense loyalty and understanding of service to a good friend that Sam is allowed to be, or allowed his heroic trace to shine, and is really the true hero of the story. And I mean, even in the end, when they go back to Hobbiton and it's been taken over, he takes up the mantle and leads the charge while Frodo stays back. I mean, time and time again, Sam is Frodo's knight and is the true hero of the story. And I think a lot of times this conception is lost, and it's just a simple buddy of Frodo's, when he really is much more of a cornerstone of the heroic deeds done in these stories, and definitely is just as mentionable as a hero such as Glorfindel or any other person, I believe, in my book. Alright guys, so that was my top 5 and one honorable mention for the biggest misconceptions that I have, that I think people have, that bug me with the Lord of the Rings. If you all like this, make sure to give it a like, comment, and subscribe. A like, comment, and subscribe, I guess it makes sense. And I'll catch you in the next Lord of the Ring and or history video. Have a great day, guys.